Hi, I'm GM Matthew Sadler.
And I'm WIM Natasha Regan. This is the second video in our series of 2 videos on AlphaZero's approach in the advanced Caro-Kann. So AlphaZero's played an interesting 5c3 in the opening, and Stockfish, this video looks at Stockfish's reply knight c6. AlphaZero plays it in quite an aggressive way by immediately pushing the b pawn, and Stockfish puts its knight onto a5, a square where it never really manages to get away from again. AlphaZero follows up in a way we've come to expect, using the h pawn, and actually a very interesting game arises where AlphaZero decides not to castle and instead get space for its pieces around its king.
Yeah, it's a really interesting game. It's one of the games where it just took me a very long time to understand what was going on. So yeah, really interesting game. Let's have a look at it. Okay, let's have a look at this game. So white started e4, c6. Those were the 2 moves specified, and then the engines were on their own. d4, d5, e5, AlphaZero's favourite, as we know. c5, which is Stockfish's favourite reply in this line of the Caro-Kann. d takes c5, e6, and then this very unusual move, c3. So in the previous video, we looked at queen c7 and also knight d7, which were great games. And we noticed that bishop c5 is just a little bit awkward for black after queen g4. So here Stockfish tried the main move, which is knight c6, forcing knight f3, and then bishop takes c5. So there's no queen g4 for white anymore now. Now, I was expecting, just whilst playing through the game at the start, just white to play something quiet like bishop d3, for example, followed by castles, and that would be perfectly fine. But what AlphaZero does is very, very aggressive and quite committal. It's b4, bishop b6. Again, we saw in the previous video, the bishop doesn't want to retreat to e7, because then the knight on g8 would have some difficulty getting developed. You might play knight h6, but always a bit double-edged after bishop takes h6. So b4, bishop b6, and now straight away b5. Yeah,
Very direct plan from AlphaZero.
a very direct plan indeed. The knight, where should the knight go? Yeah, if he goes to e7, then again we've got this little problem of developing the black knights, and I mean, wherever the black knights go, f5 or g6, as we'll see in the video, they can get targeted by white pawns. So knight a5 is the most sensible. After all, there's a square on c4 that the advance b4 to b5 has weakened. So yeah, I mean, it's not a completely trapped knight. Just unfortunately, it just never really manages to get anything done in the rest of the game, as we'll see. So
later in the game, we see that white manages the plan of exchanging all the other pieces and then leaving that knight a little bit left on the side there.
Exactly. So white played bishop a3. Stopping back from castling for the moment, just cutting across the black position. Always annoying those sort of bishops. So knight e7, knight bd2, bishop d7 from black. A multi-purpose move. First idea is to play a6, challenging that b5 pawn and getting rid and freeing the knight on a5. So yeah, white plays this move bishop b4, very calm move. Just preparing to meet a6 with a4. Just show you like that, a6 with a4. Just keeping the status quo. So black played this move, knight g6. Needs a little bit of explanation because it looks a little bit strange to stop black from castling again when it was possible. The problem with castling is that white plays bishop d3, and you might see that there's definitely a potential for some Greek gift sacrifices on h7. And the knight, if the knight moves from e7, then the rook is hanging. You might play it for compensation. I mean, you might play this type of position for compensation, but still, you know, it is the exchange for white. I mean, if black plays rook c8, I spent quite a while on these sacrifices before turning to my engine, hoping for something clearer than what I'd found. In actual fact, it's quite unclear. The king comes to h6. Always in these Greek gift sacrifices, if white doesn't have a bishop on the c1 h6 diagonal, the first defense you should look at is putting the king on h6. Queen g4, and then this move which had caused me so much consternation, bishop f2. So the idea is king f2, pardon me, queen b6, and where does the king go? e2, and then black's got knight f5. I mean, bishop b5 check is also a possibility. It's white's king is a little bit more fraught here than it usually is in a sacrifice. Queen f4. I think I got this far, and I wasn't very sure at all what was happening, to be honest. My engine carried on for a little while. I played rook e8, g4, f6, ef, e5. The assessment with a slight advantage to white, which, well, probably wasn't very helpful, really, I suppose. Need to do a lot more analysis of this one. But you can see the lines are quite fraught for black. You know, it's not something you'd want to expose yourself to in a practical game. I actually kind of preferred rook c8 for black. Just preparing to play bishop c5, maybe b6, knight b7. Before committing that knight on e7, because of course, well, that's, you know, with the benefit of hindsight in the game, of course. But when black moves the knight to g6, AlphaZero, I think, gets dollar signs in its eyes and knows exactly what it's going to do. First of all, this move is
going to involve the h-pawn.
It's going to involve the h-pawn. It could do it immediately. It plays this move rook c1 first, which is quite nice, actually, preparing c3 to c4, which you might feel will give black the opportunity to exchange its knight on a5, but that's not actually quite the case, as we'll see. So black played rook c8, again threatening with this idea of playing bishop c5, and now, as Natasha said, h4, attacking that knight on g6. Now, Stockfish tried two possibilities in this position. f6 is our main game, and pretty logical. h6 was another move, just stopping that rook's pawn from moving all the way. It turned out pretty well for white in this game. a4, a6, those two moves were included. Black willing to give up a pawn, actually, just to get its knight on a5 ready. But h5, bishop d3, AlphaZero doesn't want that. Bishop c5, castles, a takes b5, castles. And now queen e2, knight f5, and with a little threat of knight g3 here. And AlphaZero just played the very nice and direct plan of taking on c5 and playing g4 and playing king h1 and playing rook g1 and playing for g5. And this was very, very dangerous for its usual style.
Up everything against the king.
This was very dangerous for black. And I also tried it in some Stockfish Fat Fritz games, and yeah, black had a lot of difficulties defending this. So this was quite a nice plan. I liked always nice seeing those sort of things. But the main move that Stockfish played was f6. And this is very logical. The idea is if the pawn comes to h5, then the knight takes on e5 and obviously gets free. So AlphaZero took on f6. Oh, sorry, took with a pawn on there. Taking with a queen is also possible, but taking with a pawn gives at least the black king a square on f7 without a fear of a check from the knight on g5. So it's a little bit more of a natural move. Also, you've got rid of white centre, so bring some pawns towards the centre as well. AlphaZero played c4. And this is an interesting moment. If so, again, you might feel that the black can just exchange off that poor knight, but then we're going to take with a bishop, not with a knight. We're going to take with a bishop actually, and after pawn takes, we can play knight e4, and well, the threat of knight d6 is very, very awkward here. So so unfortunately for black, given the opportunity but not really able to take it. To swap off that knight on a5, so Stockfish does the next best thing and swaps off the dark square bishops and gives its king time to well, the opportunity to castle kingside. Bishop c5, rook c5, h5, chasing that knight away. The knight goes back to e7, and then c takes d5 and queen c2. And yeah, I mean, I spent a very long time looking at this position and trying to understand what was going on. I mean, on the one hand, it's very clear that White's been pressing. I mean, pawns on b5 and h5. It's clear that White's been, spending some time driving away the pieces. But always the case in these sort of positions. The question is, okay, I achieved all that, but was Black just able to, absorb that gracefully and just get ahead in development whilst White's wasting time on pawn moves, or has it really had some big effect? And I wasn't sure. I mean, my feelings about the position were sort of veering wildly all the time. But it does seem simply that. Well, Black's weakened king, the offside knight on a5, the fact that Black's pieces are developed, but you don't get a huge feeling of coordination about them. This seems to be just simply the most important factors, and the sort of slightly loose, empty space in White's position behind those those pawns on b5 and h5, and the central pawn on e5 that's been destroyed. That doesn't really matter. And, well, the key thing as well is that, I was thinking, are you going to castle? That H-pawn might turn out to be a weakness. Actually, AlphaZero isn't ever going to bother. It's simply, I guess, with that space in its position, it's able to develop its pieces without needing to castle the king. For example, and get the rook on H1 involved through H3 or H4. It doesn't need the king to castle to bring it into play. So, very, very, very interesting position, and seems just to be pretty good for White. And actually, my engines, when you let them analyse for a long time, they gradually come to that conclusion. End up pretty positive for White. And the games that we played, that I played between Stockfish and Fat Fritz, were also turning out very nicely for White. So Black castled in this position. You might notice that the pawn on b5 is loose, but here I can take and go queen a4, queen d7, and then knight e4. So threatening a
nasty fork on f6.
Indeed, and also actually a nasty fork with queen b5 and knight d6 as well. And the clever thing about it is that if you go castles, I have this move knight c3, attacking the rook on d5, on b5, pinned to the queen on d7. It looks like Black's got a chance with rook d5, but now this move queen g4 check.
The rook.
Yeah, sort of gets the queen protected, and then we're going to pick up the rook on d5. Just the first example, really, of how these weaknesses of the Black king side are causing problems. So castles, and now this very calm move queen b2. My engine's tried some other things as well, like a4 to follow up with queen e4, but AlphaZero's move very calm, queen b2, protecting the pawn on b5, targeting that pawn on f6, and the knight can come into e4 as well. So Black's got to work out how to get the pieces active. The first few moves, I suppose, are fairly obvious. Knight f5, bishop e2 from AlphaZero, b6, just to give Black the chance to play knight b7 to c5 later. Got to be a little bit careful, because after knight b7, then bishop c4 can be quite annoying for the rook on d5. That knight on a5 is performing a function at the moment, but anyway, you're prepared for later. And you also protect the knight on a5, just in case you want to move the queen away from d8. But after knight e4, well, AlphaZero's expected score has been climbing just gradually, and now it's at 71.5% expected score, which is starting to get appreciable. AlphaZero is really starting to feel that it's getting closer to the win like that. So Stockfish played bishop e8, which is a decent regrouping maneuver. You're going to play well. First of all, you're targeting that pawn on h5 to try and stop white from castling, and you're going to play e5 and bishop f7, and just try and regroup and consolidate and solidify like that. And also, if white plays h6, we see this in the game, black can play bishop g6 which is quite a decent outpost for the bishop, and also blocks the g file as well. And now AlphaZero really starts weaving its pieces together. This move rook h3 is a first nice step. This rook is eyeing the g3 square for later, just to give a nasty check to the king. And it's also got other possibilities to get active, as we'll see. e5 from black, natural move, trying to get hold of that d4 outpost. And then this unusual move, queen a3, which none of the engines are particularly favoured, but it doesn't seem to affect the assessment of the position. It's a little creeping move. The queen is attacking, X-ray attacking the pawn on a7, so the knight will never want to move from b7 because a7 would drop. And also the queen is attacking the rook on f8. So that stops for now the king moving to h8, for example, because the rook on f8 would hang. And, well, it just keeps black honest from that point of view. If the queen and the king want to move away, if there's a little check from the rook on g3, that rook on f8 could get into trouble. And there's another point to this whole move, which we'll see much, much later. So bishop f7 was played by Stockfish. Again, tactics holding the pawn on b5 there, because bishop b5 I can play knight c3 with a nice fork. I had hoped that, I spent a while on this actually, not knight c4, I was looking mainly at queen d5, king e2 and e4, and it felt like black might actually get some sort of counterplay. But knight h4 check, knight d4, king e1, and the engines are quite happy with this. The problem is you've got this stuff like either queen g3 or rook g3 or queen e7, which is actually really dangerous for black's king. This was the main engine line. Check, king f7, queen c7 check, and then queen c4 swapping off queens with a much, much better ending. So black decided to try and keep things tight and played bishop f7. And now a great move from white, actually, which took me completely by surprise. I suppose I was kind of fixated on that d4 outpost and didn't really want to give it to black. But AlphaZero doesn't really care. Plays rook's pawn up to h6 first of all. I'd forgotten about that one.
Place for the pawn and keeping that king confined to the back rank.
Exactly. And after bishop g6, played this move knight d2. That's the move I was talking about. So the nice thing about this is that it's bringing the rook on h3 fully into play now, and that rook is able to come into c3 and invade on c7. So that's a very big and unpleasant threat. So Stockfish.
So AlphaZero's keeping its eye on the end game and aiming for that. So if it can exchange black's active pieces, for example, the rook on d5, then it can get into quite a favourable endgame.
Yeah. So black plays knight e7. Slightly unusual move there, but the idea I think is to play rook d7 and knight d5 to cover any entry points on c7. And here, white plays.
It's strange to to come away from that, like the knight was attacking the H pawn, which is stopping the white rook from moving. So moving that knight away allows white's rook to get into the game even more.
That's true. On the other hand, white also has another idea of playing g4 and just chasing that knight away. So there's long term, it's probably going to be quite hard for black to keep attacking that pawn on h6. So black played knight e7, and then AlphaZero played this great move again, which was rook d3. Again, exchanging off opponent's active pieces, leaving him with passive. That rook on d5 was a little bit awkward in some ways, always, in danger of getting hit by minor pieces, but it was performing, it's a big piece in the center of the board, so obviously doing quite a bit. Removing that rook, that just means that white's got a great rook on the c file, ready to invade on c7 when the moment arises, and black's rook on f8 is very, very passive indeed. So rook takes d3, bishop takes d3. And now AlphaZero's plan is quite surprising. AlphaZero is going to prepare it, but the idea simply is to exchange off queens. Again, black's queen is quite a big piece, keeping everything together, defending c7, defending the knight, giving some extra cover to the pawn on f6. And AlphaZero just feels that swapping off that queen is the basis of success. But first of all, it plays a lot of calm preparing moves, probably moves that I wouldn't be able to play with white. I just wouldn't be able to work out whether it's possible or not. So knight d5, it plays this great move, bishop f1, just getting out of the way of knight f4, and also preparing this move queen d6. Obviously, if I play queen d6 immediately, then takes bishop d3 would lose a piece. So bishop f1, Stockfish plays knight f4, and now another amazing move, I have to say, a move that really made me jump back in amazement. g4. It's not really the move itself that's amazing. I mean, stopping f6 to f5 or dissuading it is pretty good. Obviously, it's just like a King's Indian type of structure in a way, where you have a knight on e4 and you stop black from playing f5 by playing g4. But just black plays the knight to a great looking outpost on f4, and white just says, okay, you can have it. Doesn't matter. I'll just play g4. So just one of those lovely moves. So black, Stockfish was really having problems finding a plan here. The problem is, stuff like queen d4, for example, is met by queen e7, which is going to be instant mate. Queen g7 is threatened, and rook f7 allows rook c8 check, of course. And we've also got stuff like, knight takes f6 coming in. It's really, really, it's happening really, really fast. So knight e6, and AlphaZero plays another strengthening move here, rook c3. Actually doing the same thing for the c1 rook as it did for the h3 rook. This rook can now swing to both sides. Could swing to a3, could swing over to the king side as well. So just a very flexible move. But after knight f4, then AlphaZero decides that it's strengthened its position as far as it wants to, and it plays this move queen d6.
And it is the Khenkin-Arkell variation, and Keith Arkell would be proud of a move like this.
Swapping off the queens, indeed. Grandmaster Keith Arkell, very famous, of course, for his endgames, in particular his rook endings, but I'm afraid we don't get a rook ending here. So queen d6, very hard for black to avoid this, because, white's also threatening rook c7 moving in. So takes on d6, knight on d6, and you might notice one of the rather inconvenient points to white getting a knight on d6 is that the knight on a5 is completely immobilized now, because the b7 square is taken away from the knight. So black plays rook d8 and then knight e4, and black's in big dilemma country basically at the moment. That pawn on f6 is threatened first of all. Also, the knight on a5, as we said, is pinned down. The rook on d8 is pretty well dominated by those two knights. It can't do very much at all. Black could try bishop takes e4, but then all the light squares around the king side are greatly weakened. And that's going to be, and of course, you know, the pawn on f6 is still threatened, and we're still threatening to invade on c7. So it's a possibility, and it's something that Stockfish does later, but it's not a very pleasant one. Stockfish played knight d5, which is a multi-purpose move, defending f6 and also stopping the rook from coming into c7. Rook c1, king f8, and now this move f3, which is very strong again. And yeah, the knight on d6 is now free to move. And well, actually, one of the squares it can go to is c8, attacking the pawn on a7, which is again quite a nasty idea. I mean, if black doesn't do anything, if black just waits, then well, white's going to well, I think probably activate the king a little bit. You never know, maybe even come to g3 or h4, put his bishop in superior position, and then maybe at some stage play rook d1 just to chase that knight away from d5. Once you've covered the escape squares the knight on d5 has got. So Stockfish takes a radical decision just to try and break up the position. Just gives away this pawn on a7. That's quite a decent idea, actually. The only problem is that when the pawn on a7 goes, the pawn on b6 goes as well. And black, yeah, hasn't really got rid of its weakness like the pawn on f6, for example. And the knight on a5 is still, you know, somewhere away from good squares. So, I mean, black took on e4 and went knight e7, actually trying to contain that knight on a7 by stopping it from coming back to c8. And black's hoping for some counterplay, maybe knight b7, maybe rook d4 against the pawns on e4. But bishop e2, rook d7, knight c8. This is a little bit of a problem, and here we see that it always turns out to be the case. Well, always is a big word, but very often that moving the pawn to h6, it's useful in the middle game. It's just to restrict the king, set up all sorts of mating threats, and it's been used in this game. But it's also useful in the endgame because it really pins a target on h7 for white's pieces. And well, AlphaZero uses this target on h7 very skillfully to attack other weak black pawns. The first thing is this move g5, which creates another weakness on e5. Enables you to activate the bishop, so well, the king's just a little bit restricted. And then AlphaZero can start attacking the various weaknesses. Well, the pawn on b6 is a big one, of course, because then white would get two protected pass pawns on the queen side. So rook b7, rook f8 check, rook c8, just a little shimmy there, and then king e2. It's a very typical idea to check the king, move back to a slightly better square, and then improve another piece. A very typical endgame idea. And of course, with the rook on c8, the knight on a5 is still immobilized there. It's been on that square since since move 8. It's really quite shocking. So g4 from Stockfish, a good attempt, just trying to get some freedom and play king g5 takes h6. So bishop g4, rook e7, bishop f5, attacking the pawn on h7, king g5. And that pawn on h6 is going to be doomed, unfortunately. It's a real shame. But now white can target the pawns on b6, black covers, and now the pawn on e5. And well, the big problem for black is that still that knight on a5 is not working. And getting the rook and knight active and not dropping the b6 pawn is turns out to be a very difficult task indeed. So king g7, rook e5, rook c7, rook e6, again targeting that pawn on b6. Well, it gets very hard for black. If black plays knight c4, for example, then we'll go king d4. and just threaten rook c6. And well, when the rooks get exchanged, we get a passed c pawn, and it's end of the line for black. So black tried a little rook check. King moved over, king d4, rook d7, king e5, knight c4, king f4. So black's managed to get this with tempo, but, well, we're still looking at rook c6 just to chase that knight away. So black played rook d1, getting the rook active, rook c6, rook f1 check, king g3. And now, unfortunately, this this knight on c4 is in a lot of difficulties. You don't want to play rook c1 because we'll probably just end up going a4 and a5 and just exploiting the pin on the knight on c4. Even bishop e6 might turn out to be winning as well. So black played knight a3, but after rook b6, both engines' valuation was so high that Stockfish here resigned. So white's 2 pawns up, got this huge pass b pawn, and is also threatening rook b7 takes h7 as well in the end as well. So that was that game. It sort of concludes our sort of repertory, I suppose, against the Khenkin-Arkell. This very unusual move, g3 in the opening, c3 rather in the opening. Just take a look again at the highlights of the game. Well, I thought that c3 was already quite a highlight, very unusual move and very interesting idea. I thought this very quick thrust b4 to b5 was very interesting. I hadn't expected it at all, but it worked out beautifully. I thought this was very important. This move bishop b4 to play a4, preventing a6 takes b5, and yeah, this whole position, where white's playing very aggressively, really pushing all of its pawns and chasing pieces away. I found to be, a very confusing and interesting position to analyze. But it just looks that, just seems that, even if black had a slight lead in development, the fact that its pieces were not coordinating very well, that was the key. And obviously the weakness of the black king was also a big factor in giving white all sorts of chances. And I did like, somehow, the white major pieces were getting active around the edge. So the rook came to h3 and the queen came to a3, but then somehow they converge again in the center. So, this rook came to d3, and then the white queen came to d6. Just around the edge and then converging in the center again. Really, a very nice thing. And of course, a couple of these moves, just that AlphaZero played just to strengthen its position before it finally swapped off the queens. Or, bishop f1, knight f4, g4. All completely unexpected, and this move rook c3 again, strengthening even more before finally going for queen d6. And that was very nice. And how the theme plays all the way through. That this knight that was chased to the side on move 8, just by the time it got into the game, we're into move 50 already. Way too late. Very, very impressive play. I really like this game a lot. So
it's another thing AlphaZero does a lot of the time, just restraining the opponent's pieces. So it really does look like right from the beginning it's decided, well, that knight's out of play, and I'll just keep an eye on every square it can go to and just keep it restrained, and then in the end I will strategically win it. Of course, that's going to be hard to do in practice, but it just manages to keep that knight there for the whole of the game.
Yeah, it's amazing, really. I mean, there are a lot of I saw a lot of those in Game Changer as well. These also a lot of games where the black queen is kept passive, and that was pretty much the case in this game as well. I mean, actually, come to think of it, when white plays queen d6, black's queen has not moved yet. It's amazing, really. Just that how it happens in this game. Yeah. The black queen, the first move that it plays is the exchange. Yeah, some really great strategical things you find in AlphaZero's games, you know, and especially, of course, you know, against such fierce resistance as Stockfish puts up. So there we are. I mean, I hope you enjoyed that game. If you haven't subscribed to our channel,
please subscribe.
Please subscribe, and well, otherwise, do take a look at our at our book Game Changer. Just lots more games like this, lots more wonderful games, and otherwise, keep well, keep safe, keep looking after yourselves, and keep on watching this channel. Thanks for watching.